In the serene land of ancient India, nestled amidst the towering Himalayan mountains, there lived a young man named Siddhartha. Born into a life of luxury and privilege, Siddhartha had everything a person could desire: wealth, power, and a loving family. Yet, despite all the comforts and luxuries that surrounded him, a profound sense of dissatisfaction gnawed at his soul. As he grew older, Siddhartha began to notice the suffering that plagued the world outside the palace walls. He saw poverty, illness, and death, and he couldn't reconcile the stark contrast between his opulent life and the harsh realities faced by the common people. This realization filled him with a deep sense of empathy and a burning desire to understand the root of human suffering. One fateful night, unable to sleep, Siddhartha made a life-altering decision. He left the palace, abandoning his royal status, wife, and son, to embark on a journey of self-discovery. He wandered through the forests and villages of India, seeking wisdom from ascetics and scholars alike, in search of answers to the fundamental questions that tormented his mind. For 6 long years, Siddhartha subjected himself to extreme ascetic practices, fasting and meditating for days on end. His body grew frail, his bones protruded, and his skin hung loose. But despite his relentless efforts, the answers he sought remained elusive. One day, as he lay on the brink of death by the banks of the river Ganges, he realized the futility of his extreme asceticism. Siddhartha had strived to overcome suffering through self-denial and extreme discipline, but he had only pushed himself further into the clutches of despair. It was then that he decided to follow a different path, one of balance and moderation. He accepted a simple meal offered by a kind village girl, and with newfound strength, he sat beneath a Bodhi tree, vowing not to rise until he had found enlightenment. As the days turned into weeks, Siddhartha delved deep into his own mind, examining his thoughts and feelings with unwavering focus. He confronted his fears, desires, and attachments head-on. It was during this time that he experienced a profound transformation, a revelation that would change the course of his life and the lives of countless others. One night, as the full moon illuminated the landscape, Siddhartha reached a state of deep meditation. In that moment of clarity, he saw the interconnectedness of all living beings and understood the root of human suffering. He realized that suffering was born from attachment, from the craving for things to be different than they were. He understood that hatred and anger were the result of this suffering, and he saw that they only perpetuated the cycle of pain and misery. With this insight, Siddhartha attained enlightenment and became the Buddha, the awakened one. His teachings, known as the Dharma, centered on the 4 noble truths and the Eightfold Path. The first noble truth was the acknowledgement of suffering as an inherent part of human existence. The second truth was the recognition of the cause of suffering, attachment and desire. The third truth was the possibility of liberation from suffering, and the fourth truth was the path to attain that liberation. The Eightfold Path consisted of 8 guiding principles that offered a practical and ethical framework for living a life free from suffering. These principles were right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. The Buddha's teachings emphasized the importance of love, compassion, and non-harming, ahimsa, towards all living beings. He taught that by cultivating love and compassion, individuals could break the cycle of suffering and find lasting peace and happiness. The Buddha's teachings were not confined to intellectual discourse, but were meant to be applied in everyday life. One of the central teachings of the Buddha was encapsulated in a simple yet profound statement: love all living things. Hate cannot be resolved by hatred, but by love. This is an eternal truth. The Buddha understood that hatred and anger were destructive forces that only fueled more hatred and anger. They created a never-ending cycle of pain and suffering, both for the individual harboring these emotions and for those who were the targets of their hatred. Instead, the Buddha advocated the practice of metta, or loving kindness, as a way to counteract hatred and cultivate compassion. He taught his followers to radiate love and goodwill towards all beings, starting with themselves and extending it to friends, acquaintances, enemies, and even to all sentient beings, without exception. The practice of metta was not just a theoretical concept, but a practical tool to transform one's mind and heart. The Buddha's teachings on love and compassion were not mere platitudes. They were rooted in a profound understanding of the human psyche. He recognized that hatred and anger were born from fear, ignorance, and the misperception of separateness. By cultivating love and compassion, individuals could break down the walls of division and realize the interconnectedness of all life. The Buddha's message of love and non-harming extended beyond human beings to include all living creatures. He taught that every being, from the smallest insect to the largest mammal, had a right to live without fear or harm. He emphasized the importance of practicing mindfulness and compassion in all interactions with animals, whether they were domesticated or wild. One of the most famous stories from the Buddha's life exemplified his deep compassion for all living beings. It was a hot summer day, and the Buddha was meditating in a forest grove. Nearby, a young elephant named Nalagiri, intoxicated with alcohol, was causing havoc in the village and trampling everything in his path. When the villagers sought refuge in the Buddha, he calmly walked towards the raging elephant. As the Buddha approached Nalagiri, he radiated an aura of peace and love. Miraculously, the elephant's anger subsided, and he knelt before the Buddha, gently placing his head at the master's feet. The Buddha touched Nalagiri's forehead with his hand, calming the wild beast and soothing his troubled mind. The elephant, transformed by the Buddha's loving presence, became gentle and docile from that day on. This story became a powerful symbol of the Buddha's ability to pacify even the most violent and unruly beings through the force of love and compassion. It reinforced his teaching that hatred could not be overcome by hatred, but only by love, and it served as a reminder of the transformative power of loving kindness. As the Buddha traveled throughout India, his teachings spread far and wide. His followers, known as monks and nuns, gathered to hear his discourses and to learn the path to enlightenment. Among his disciples, there were those who found immediate liberation through the practice of his teachings, while others embarked on a lifelong journey towards enlightenment. One of the Buddha's most devoted and accomplished disciples was Ananda, his cousin and close companion. Ananda had accompanied Siddhartha from the palace to the moment of his enlightenment under the Bodhi tree. He had faithfully served the Buddha for many years, recording his teachings and assisting him in countless ways. Ananda was known for his deep love and devotion to the Buddha. He cherished every moment in his presence and followed the Master's teachings with unwavering dedication. However, despite his profound knowledge of the Dharma, Ananda had not yet attained enlightenment himself. One day, as Ananda was meditating by himself, he realized that there was one crucial aspect of the Buddha's teachings that he had not fully understood and embraced: the practice of metta, or loving kindness. He recognized that, despite his intellectual understanding of the concept, he had not cultivated a deep and genuine sense of love and compassion for all beings. Determined to rectify this, Ananda began to meditate on loving kindness every day. He practiced sending thoughts of love and goodwill to all living beings, including those he had conflicts with or held resentment towards. He extended his compassion to animals, insects, and even to the trees and plants that surrounded him. As Ananda's practice of metta deepened, he experienced a profound transformation. His heart opened, and a wellspring of love and compassion flowed from within him. He felt a deep sense of connectedness with all living beings and an overwhelming desire to alleviate their suffering. The barriers that had kept him from enlightenment crumbled, and Ananda finally attained the ultimate realization. Filled with boundless joy, Ananda rushed to the Buddha's side to share his newfound enlightenment. The Buddha, with a loving smile, welcomed Ananda and praised his efforts. He explained that the practice of metta was not a mere intellectual exercise, but a transformative force that could lead to profound awakening. Ananda's realization of the power of love and compassion further reinforced the Buddha's teachings on the importance of loving all living things. It was a testament to the eternal truth that hatred could never be resolved by hatred but only by love. In the years that followed, the Buddha continued to travel and teach, touching the hearts and minds of people from all walks of life. His teachings spread not only throughout India, but also to other parts of Asia and beyond. His message of love, compassion, and non-harming resonated with people of diverse cultures and backgrounds. One of the most significant aspects of the Buddha's teachings was their adaptability and universality. He did not impose rigid dogmas or religious rituals on his followers, but instead offered a timeless and practical path to liberation. His teachings transcended the boundaries of religion and became a philosophy of life that could be embraced by people of all faiths or no faith at all. The Buddha's teachings on love and compassion also found resonance in other spiritual traditions. His emphasis on nonviolence and the interconnectedness of all life influenced the rise of Jainism, another ancient Indian religion known for its commitment to non-harming and non-violence. Mahavira, the founder of Jainism, preached similar principles of compassion and love towards all living beings. In the centuries that followed, the Buddha's message continued to inspire countless individuals and movements dedicated to peace and nonviolence. Figures such as Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., and Nelson Mandela drew inspiration from the Buddha's teachings on love and non-harming as they led movements for social justice and equality. The Buddha's teachings on love and compassion also found their way into various forms of art and literature. Buddhist stories and parables, known as Jataka tales, often featured animals as central characters, conveying the message that all beings, regardless of their form, were deserving of love and respect. One such Jataka tale told the story of a compassionate hare who, in a selfless act of love, offered his own flesh to a hungry traveler who had lost his way in the forest. The traveler turned out to be a god in disguise, and he was deeply moved by the hare's sacrifice. He revealed himself and marked the hare's image on the moon as a symbol of eternal love and compassion. The image of the moon hare became a beloved symbol in Buddhist culture, reminding people of the boundless love and compassion that one could cultivate and share with all living beings. In the present day, the Buddha's teachings on love and compassion continue to hold profound relevance. In a world often marred by conflict, division, and hatred, the Buddha's message serves as a timeless reminder of the transformative power of love and non-harming. In a world where hatred and violence seem to be on the rise, the Buddha's teachings offer a path towards healing and reconciliation. They call upon individuals to look within themselves and confront their own fears, biases, and prejudices. They challenge us to extend love and compassion, not only to those who are like us, but also to those who are different, and even to those whom we consider our enemies. The Buddha's message of love, all living things, and the eternal truth that hatred can only be resolved by love serves as a beacon of hope in a troubled world. It reminds us that the power to create a more peaceful and harmonious world lies within each of us. It is a call to action, a call to transform our own hearts and minds so that we may be agents of love and healing in a world desperately in need of both. As we reflect on the life and teachings of the Buddha, we are reminded that his journey from a life of privilege to one of self-discovery and enlightenment was driven by a deep sense of empathy and a burning desire to alleviate human suffering. His teachings on love and compassion are a testament to the profound impact that one individual can have on the world when guided by the eternal truth that hatred can only be resolved by love. In the end, the story of Siddhartha, who became the Buddha, is a story of a man who found the key to lasting happiness and liberation, not through the pursuit of worldly pleasures or the avoidance of suffering, but through the cultivation of love and compassion for all living beings. It is a story that continues to inspire and guide countless seekers on their own journeys towards inner peace and enlightenment. A story that reminds us of the boundless potential for love and transformation that resides within each of us.